I have thoughts. Hello everyone, my name is Gio and you're watching Book Rants. Mistborn, The Final Empire, or Mistborn for short, is the first book in the Mistborn trilogy that's also coincidentally what introduced many of Brandon Sanderson's fans into his works, including yours truly. In it, we follow Vin, a 16-year-old street urchin, as she is swept in the schemes and machinations of a con man and charismatic character, Kelsier, and his gang of thieves as they try to pull off the greatest heist of all time, overthrowing the 1,000-year-long reign of an immortal demigod. Shocking, I know. What I love about this book is that it subverts many of our preconceived notions and assumptions about the fantasy genre, and it does so really effectively. First of all, in this book, you don't have a world that is hanging by a thread, waiting to be swayed one way or the other. This isn't Wheel of Time and Lord of the Rings, y'all. Here, the bad guys already won. The thread's already been cut, and everything's already in shambles. This is a story of what happens next. This is a story of despair and whether or not you should just succumb to it, which is a really interesting route to take your story. Then there's the characters. You might think, oh, a 16-year-old girl and a charismatic man, I know where this is going. And you would be wrong. No, our main characters, Vin and Kelsier, had a strictly mentor-mentee relationship, and an amazing one at that. Kelsier serves as our competent but questionable father figure to our orphan Vin, and Vin acts as the feisty, murder-happy surrogate daughter to Kelsier. And speaking of characters, our main protagonists are not the only one fleshed out. Our secondary characters also have their own quirks, identities, and stories instead of just being relegated in the backdrop. Hell, even the main villain, despite having the least amount of screen time among everyone in the main cast, has some subtleties and nuances in his portrayal. Alright, I can't take it anymore. There will be minor spoilers from here on out. You've been warned. So, the characters. I've already told you a bit about Kelsier and Vin, but I want to go more in-depth into their backgrounds. As mentioned, Vin's a street urchin that survived by being a part of a gang of thieves who only let her stay because she's useful. You see, she has some talents. No, not that kind of talents, you pervert. I'll talk about it more later. Anyway, the gang leader exploits these talents to get whatever he wants. Vin no longer has a family after her older brother left him and never came back. Because of this, she has trust issues and has trouble seeing other people as nothing more than just another person who would eventually betray and abandon her. Until she met Kelsier and his group, that is. Then she learned little by little that no matter how bleak the world might be, there's still some good in it. I loved seeing her grow, and I enjoyed seeing her slowly tear down the walls that she had surrounded herself with and start treating the new companions that she has as her family. Then there's Kelsier. At first, you might think that he's just another cardboard cutout of a hero archetype, and I won't blame you because that's how he's trying to portray himself. But you will be wrong. He might be loyal to his friends and he might have noble intentions, but he's also selfish and vindictive. And despite all his declarations about being selfless and doing everything he wants for the sake of the Ska, this world's version of peasants and slaves, he has his own self-centered reasons why he's trying to raise a rebellion. And it's all for a good old revenge. Sure, he does care about the people that he's trying to help, but that's only half of the story, and Brandon Sanderson will not let you forget that. At least for me. And just like with any anti-hero hell-bent in fulfilling their revenge quest, there is nothing that he wouldn't do to achieve his goals. And boy, does he go to ridiculous measures to make sure that his plan succeeds. Like setting yourself up as a Christ figure to combat the literal sliver of divinity that you're trying to overthrow. That level of ridiculous. Anyway, speak of the devil, or well, demigod. Our antagonist is known in the books as the Lord Ruler. The story starts at the tail end, although he doesn't know it yet, of his 1,000-year long reign after he supposedly saved the world. We don't see much of him at first, and the only information that we have of him are from rumors and eyewitness accounts of people who have met him before. That said, when we do finally meet him, we can deduce what type of character he is by how world-weary he seems. I guess when you've lived for more than a millennium, it would kind of start to grow old. Anyway, where was I? Oh yes, the world-weary Lord Ruler. So we don't see him that much, but Brandon Sanderson, through his subtle writing characterization, still managed to portray him as someone with depth and personality. I can't express what I mean without using quotes directly from the book, but if I start doing that, I might not stop and this would become a read-along, and Brandon Sanderson's team and lawyers might contact me and take down this video. So let's move on. Mistborn's secondary characters are also well fleshed out instead of just being one-note cookie-cutter background ornaments, which I really appreciated. For example, there's Doxson. He's a member of Kelsier's gang who is in charge of the logistics. Like all bureaucrats, he's sort of anal retentive and obsessed with paperwork and processes, and he also serves as the voice of reason in the group. Whenever Kelsier does or says something crazy, he's always there to get him back on track. He also used to be a plantation slave whose lover was raped, then murdered by his noble owner. Then there's Ham, who is the muscle of the group. Despite looking like a meathead, he's obsessed with philosophical discussions and is also one of the most level-headed members of the gang. He has this dynamic with this other character called Breeze, which I really enjoyed, and I found his attempts to engage everyone in a philosophical discussion very endearing and funny at times. And speaking of Breeze, he's another member of the crew whose function I could explain more once I get into the magic system of the story, so I'll get back to it later. I guess you could say that among everyone in the book, his is the background that's not very well fleshed out. His shallow and superficial exterior belies a cunning and manipulative character underneath that makes him the best in his field of work. There's plenty more characters that I can talk about, like Marsh, who is Kelsier's older brother, Clubs, another member of the crew, Sazed, who is Vince's manservant, and my adorable little baby boy, Spook. But I don't want this to be another 25-minute video, so I'm gonna stop here. As you can see, character work is one of Brandon Sanderson's greatest strengths, but he's also exceptional when it comes to crafting magic systems. In Mistborn, we are introduced to allomancy, or the ability to metabolize or burn specific metals in order to gain physical augmentations or supernatural abilities. Most allomancers, called mistings, can only burn a single metal and have access to that metal's specific ability. And even rarer are Mistborn, which can burn them all. Vin and Kelsier are two of the titular Mistborn. Ham and Breeze, who I mentioned earlier, are mistings. Ham is what's called a thug, an individual who can burn pewter, which then enhances their physical attributes such as strength, speed, agility, and balance to supernatural levels. While Breeze, on the other hand, is what's called a soother, which means he can burn bronze, and which then gives him the ability to dampen or soothe somebody's emotions. Breeze is exceptionally talented in this kind of thing, that he can make you do anything that he wants you to do, although the power does not really include mind control. There are plenty more in this magic system that I would want to go through, but I would explore them in a separate video. For now, I think it's enough to say that Mistborn's magical system is the first of its kind that I've ever seen when I first read this book. There's this whole spectrum from soft to hard magic system that Brandon Sanderson popularized, which I will explore in another video, so watch out for that. And this book is an amazing and interesting execution of that concept. Finally, there's the writing. Like I mentioned earlier, this book is a part of a trilogy, but if you've read this without knowing that, you wouldn't even realize it. Sure, there are hints here and there that there's more to the story than what you can find in between the covers. But the whole plot itself is so self-contained that all of the major plot threads are resolved by the time that you're on the last pages of the book, and I love that. I also love that on my reread, as this is the second time that I've read the book, there are clues and hints about what's coming next that I haven't picked up on the first time I've ever read this story. All in all, Mistborn is a great book, and I have converted a lot of people into reading the fantasy genre by having them read this book. Hi, Fimi! Wait, I think I'm forgetting something. Right, I haven't actually ranted yet. Okay, here goes. So, this is Brandon Sanderson's second ever book to get published, and it's kinda obvious in the writing style. While the broad strokes are masterfully done, there are hints that he still has some room to improve and work on. For example, the exposition dumps. Sometimes it's fine, but sometimes it falls flat. There are instances in this book that reads like encyclopedia entries, and you know how I feel about that. There's also the pacing issue. The exposition dumps definitely did not help regarding this case, but the two main reasons why it might be slow for some, although not for me, is because this is a heist book and because of Brandon Sanderson's character work. First, the heist. Because of the nature of the plot, a huge part of the book is just the characters sitting in the room talking. As for Brandon's character work, the drawback on focusing on characterization is that sometimes the plot screeches to a halt so that we can focus on the characters' inner monologues and their development. If you picked up this book because of its action-packed scenes, and there are a lot of those, then the lull in between the battles might bore you. Also, the romantic subplot. Oh yes, you thought Vin does not have a love interest in this book? Well, guess what? Vin's romance is insta-lovey. Not only that, but there's also, well, some weird implications. You see, Ellen, Vin's love interest, is 21 to Vin's 16. But what the hell, right? It's just a 5-year age gap. What's the big deal? Well, you see, Vin grew up in the streets, which means she's malnourished and therefore looks smaller and younger for her age. She's actually been described as someone who could pass for a 13 or 14-year-old. And Ellen still felt attracted to her even before she knew how old she actually is. Well, I will just let that sink in for a bit. Anyway, aside from the unintentionally implied pedophilia, the book's great. I'll give it a 7.2 out of 8 allomantic medals. You'll get that if you've read the book. I recommend this to whoever wants to read something fresh from the fantasy genre, and even those who want to know what modern fantasy has to offer. That's all I got for now. Toodles! As always, thanks so much for watching this video, and don't forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe, and watch out for the next one from this channel. Thank you.